Welcome to this week's edition of Dugout Dish Podcast. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my co-host as usual, Keith Glasser. Keith, how we doing?
Great. How are you?
Excited. We have another very special guest on today, and I'm gonna kick it over to you since you two are located in the same city of Rochester. I'm gonna kick it over to you for the introduction.
Yeah. Special guest tonight. Very, very close friend of ours, very close friend of mine. Often referenced on this show. I'm currently wearing one of the other hats that the AA team for that I got last year. But tonight we have a very good friend of ours, longtime listener, first time guest, the AAA pitching coach for the St. Paul Saints in the Minnesota Twins organization, Pete Larson. Petey, thanks for joining us, bud.
Fellas, what is up? Finally did it. Took a while.
Yeah.
You play like 160 games. It's a long season for you.
150.
Close enough. We're splitting hairs at that time.
Yeah.
But no, we're super excited for you to be here. It's going to be we were talking before as Jonathan likes to say, the pre-show. It's going to be a little bit of a different podcast, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun to, talk about your path and where you started and where you currently are. And then, your insight and things, and, not only from a college, but also a pro ball standpoint that I think is ultimately super valuable for people because, ultimately I think like the three of us, when we were kids, like you do want to play pro ball eventually. Like, and what does that look like? So if you can, before we get going and put you on the hot seat, I guess we'll start it now and turn the heat up a little bit, but give the listeners just a rundown of, how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. Very long journey. I'll try and keep it brief and try to just hit the main points, but grew up in the same hometown as another former podcast guy, Eric Suplee. Grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia. We actually played middle school together. Shout out Berkeley Bulldogs, one of the best middle school teams in the history of Williamsburg, Virginia. Won the district, took it home. Eric just killed it on the mound. He's also a shortstop. I was in seventh grade, so seventh graders didn't really get to play that much. So I got to watch a lot, pitching some mop-up games. And that was one of the most legendary middle school teams probably out there. We didn't go to the same high school. We went to rival high schools, went to Lafayette High School. And then from high school, went to Ferrum College, Southwest Virginia, Division III school. Not really known for, it's not a big campus, not high academic, but a lot of tradition, really good athletics, studied business, more accounting based, when I was there. Had some fun teams. I was hampered by injuries most of my career there. I had Tommy John my freshman year, so I missed, based on the timing of the injury and the rehab, maybe a slight misdiagnosis from a doctor there. Missed 2 years. So by the time I actually got to play, it was my third year. And I was just really behind. And so I got more experience in summer ball. So I was very fortunate to get a couple stints in some good summer leagues, which helped me kind of accelerate and catch back up. I ended up having a good senior year out of the bullpen. Parlayed that into a couple opportunities with some independent league teams. Did that. Very brief stints. Glad I did it. Glad I pushed myself to keep it going. Felt like I was just, with all the injuries and whatnot, just kind of, I didn't reach the full potential. I just wanted to try and keep pushing as long as I could. So finished up, and like everybody, graduate college. I did the extra year because of the injury stuff. And then now what? So I got a couple of different sales jobs, moved around the state of Virginia a little bit, following those. Got reached out by a buddy. I was playing an adult wood bat league on Sundays just to hang around some guys from high school and just keep it going a little bit. No real goal in mind other than it's Sunday. We're going to get together. We're going to play some baseball. One of the guys was the head varsity coach at Jamestown High School, where Eric Saplee went. Helped him out for 2 years while I was working. I got a new job, relocated to Richmond, Virginia, and I was pitching coach over at the collegiate school, private school right outside of Richmond, and had a really good experience those 3 years. I think I knew coaching was probably more for me when it got close to 3:00, 3:30, and I knew, hey, it's time to get over to the field. It's time to get over to practice. I looked forward to doing the small things, dragging the infield, painting bases, setting up, breaking down, building those relationships with those kids and the families, and seeing them grow. And part of that process too, I thought was really cool. Andrew Slater was the head coach there. I think extremely highly of him. Baseball family, coached in college, knew what it took. And one day he came up to me. He's like, I think you could do this in college. And I think you might be able to make a run at this. It's kind of a career. You're not going to make much money, but, put your name in for a few things. Had another, we had a mutual friend, Matt Kirby, who's at UVA. Curbs needed some help with camps. So I was helping out in the summertime, coaching a travel team and then running up there, helping them out with youth camp, kind of just, herding the kids around and, help out with the prospect camp. Prospect camp got to meet a lot of the college coaches. Somehow parlayed that into my first gig at King University, Division II school in Bristol, Tennessee. We had played King when they were NAIA. When I was at Farron, we played them midweek, close enough, a couple hours, not too bad for a midweek game. Other than that, I didn't know much of it. Another small school right there in the foothills of the mountains, and in a beautiful campus. More of a commuter kind of school. They had some online stuff, but really good first, eye-opening fall for me. I thought I knew what it took to coach in college. I was extremely I couldn't have been more wrong in like my first month. A lot more went into it than I initially thought. I didn't think it was going to be like high school where you show up at 3 for a 4:00 practice. A lot more went into it. And once I got I just maybe more my feet on the ground and got into the flow of things. Went on the first recruiting trip, which for me was great. It was a junior college event in Indiana. Myself and the pitching coach went out, and he gave me, it was a long car ride. So he gave me the laydown on, what to expect, what to look for, what we're looking for. Really good crash course. He kind of let me go. He dropped me off at one of the multiple sites, and then we'd reconvene later, compare notes, cross-check on guys. So he already had reports on some guys or some intel from some coaches. And then he was just like, yeah, like this is, adding up and matching up, and we're on the same page. And from then on, it just kind of hit the ground running. I was a little older, having not coached right out of college at the college level. So they recommended I try and get a summer job in a wood bat league to try and accelerate that. Might look a little bit better on the resume. Obviously, you coach more games, but you can work with different, kids from different schools. It helps with the networking. So I went in blind on that. I actually had a slight connection. GM from a team that I played for in the Coastal Plain League. He was out there, but I didn't know he was there. Kind of just shot out a bunch of emails, and I ended up at Madison, Wisconsin with the Mallards. Really cool experience. I helped with the pitching at King, but I was kind of all over the place. Help with the hitters, help with the outfielders, throwing BP, hitting fungos, kind of just wherever they needed help. I was kind of filling in that gap. We had a varsity and a JV team, so kind of a little more of a role on the junior varsity in terms of going on the road, and if the varsity team was staying back and stuff like that. So got a really good experience at King, but I wanted to run my own pitching staff and just see what that the day-to-day stuff would look like if I were to do it on my own. And the Northwoods League is kind of a gauntlet. It's 60-something games, and you can just say 60-something days. I don't think we got many days off. When we did, it was for this all-star game, all-star week thing, but we ended up coaching games in that anyway because it was at our place. but got to coach guys Division 1, 2, 3, JUCO, all levels, from all over the country, different philosophies. They're coming from different backgrounds. And then I'm essentially just managing their workload, communicating with their coaches on the expectations, what they're looking for, managing all the pitch counts and inning requirements they might have had. But we had a blast, had a good summer, a good season, made it to the playoffs. As with every college coach, starting out, you're not looking for the next one, but what else could be out there or a better opportunity. And for me, I hit the bug with the pitching coach role, and I wanted to run my own staff, keep running my own staff. So I put in for a few jobs that would allow me to do that. Didn't really matter the level. So I put in for a few. I got towards the end of that Northwood summer, getting ready to head back to King, and had been recruiting some JUCO guys that I saw in summer ball. Tony Rossi gave me a call. I don't know, June, maybe late June, July. We had a couple of calls. I know he's been on the show, so I actually talked to him this morning. But we had a really good initial phone conversation, had a follow-up. He'd reached out to non-references, which is a big thing of his, which I think it's unique, very much old school. You send in your resume and you got probably 3 people that know you really well and can vouch for you. But he didn't really care about those guys. He wanted people that you might have crossed paths with, that was going to give you a better representation, non-biased. And I think that obviously it checked out. But I went there, Division 1 school, upstate New York, but I was the unpaid second assistant. So very unique with the realm of Division 1. I was one of the recruiting coaches, but could not, I didn't get paid. So very unique. Yeah.
You're the same spot.
Yeah. So not glamorous. It's not like, probably what kids see on TV and think, initially, but for me, I thought it was great. I still had a bunch of money saved from working previously in my sales jobs. And I was like, I can float it for a year, see where it takes me. So I wrote it out for this fall and spring there. Great experience. Learned a ton. Helped out with some hitting, but I was the primary pitching coach, coached first base during games, which just gives you a different perspective. Had to rush a little bit when I'm talking to pitchers and catchers in between innings to make sure I threw on the skull cap and get over there. But I can't speak. Keith's gone into it in detail, and some other guys on here have gone into it on detail and how awesome and impactful Tony Rossi is. And it's hard to put in a few words, but just the utmost respect for the way he ran us, let us grow, let us fail, try things. He would interject if he's like, I don't know about this. Can you explain it to me? And then more often than not, all right, yeah, I'm in. But he wanted to understand why, and which I think is great. Like, I always am looking for feedback and how I can do something better, or if it looks weird, different. I think some things probably around that was in 2016, 15, 16. So things are starting to get a little weird with plyo balls, bands, and like this whole takeover of what pitching is now, which somewhat like, guys our age and guys we're pretty close with started to gravitate towards. The kids we're recruiting and coaching are interested in it. They're going into academies and they're finding these places. So we have to be in tune on it. And so he had a lot of questions on that just because it was, foreign to him, but he was still learning. So I thought that was really cool too. From Siena, I went really far and across town to UAlbany. Kind of just stumbled into that. They had an opening late, maybe not late, earlier in the summer. Had met the head coach on the road, met the assistant. I forget, we were somewhere locally recruiting, watching a summer game, and the assistant asked if there was any interest. And at that point, I was like, is it paid or what are we looking at? And he's like, no, there's stipends and benefits. And I was like, all right, yeah, like I love Siena, I love Rossi. His whole gist is to get you in, groom you, and get you out. So I called him, said you might get a call on this, and I think Mueller already did. So by the time I could tell Coach, he was already in the works with it. So for the then following year, the 16-17 season, I was at U Albany. Same role, second assistant, recruiting, pitching. And we were trying, not the greatest facilities, but made it work. Some guys it was a different kind of kid than Siena. It was a state school, so we're getting in-state kids. Recruiting was a little bit different. We were going out, extending that branch a little bit in the Northeast. But for the most part, we were trying to focus on in-state kids, knowing that that'd be, in the financial interest that we could package really well there. And, the baseball money, which I'm sure if we get to any of the recruiting, ins and outs of it, it just financially, it worked out for a lot of in-state kids that might have gotten baseball money at other schools. Like if you stay in state and live off campus at one of the baseball houses or whatnot, like you can actually pay less and not get a baseball scholarship, which ended up being great, recruiting tool and different ways to communicate to the kids. So I thought that was it was a really good experience for me. And we had a good season, better than a couple of previous ones, made a nice run into the tournament too. Got bounced, I think one of the last day, ended up losing to Maine, who ended up going to the championship, and they lost, I think, UMBC that year. Great summer recruiting, bounced all over, worked some different camps, got to know some more people, and guys are moving into campus end of August, and I get a call from Kevin Layton at Fordham. Their pitching coach had just taken another job, and he said, I know it's late in the summer, but is there any interest? And like a bunch of guys that have been on here and some former guests, like Rob or Jimmy, they had stops at Fordham. High academic. Siena is more academic than U Albany, but the recruiting wasn't nationwide, and that was something that Kev and Rob and Jimmy, they had built over those years, is to build that brand and get kids from all over the country to come to New York City, the Bronx, and get that city experience. They thought it was extremely valuable for the team aspect, and that's what they thought of first. We're not going to recruit Florida kids for the sake of recruiting Florida kids. Let's bring some Florida kids together with the Maryland, the Connecticut, Texas, and let's get some California kids in there and mesh them all together. And it was just a really cool, unique experience, and recruiting was a ton of fun. Obviously get to hang out with Rob and Kev and do that, and then live in New York City and experience the city life a little bit. We had a lot of success, started to build something really good. Maybe got bounced a little too early our first year in 18 in the tournament. Came back really excited about the guys we had coming in. I was fired up, so I got to be a part of that class too. So fall of 18, spring of 19, we could start to see the makings of a really good team coming together and making a run at that A10 championship, which they ended up doing in the spring, which was really cool. I ended up watching that because during the fall, there just was this unique pro baseball it was a weird state that year. A lot of pro teams were looking for college coaches, specifically guys maybe at some facilities. They were looking for guys that, I think, to sum it up, they were looking to develop differently, maybe a little more progressive, just thought outside the box, get outside of the traditional ways of, hey, and this isn't a knock on anyone, in general, but this is what, when I was coming up and playing, this is what we did, so we're going to keep doing this. Or this is what we've been doing as an organization for years. We're just going to keep it going, kind of thing. And teams had no problem doing that for years. A lot of organizations had success. But then there was a few teams specifically that were looking to do things a little bit differently. Through a friend of a friend, a mutual connection from coaching at King, met him. He was at Tusculum at the time. I was recruiting in Florida, Fort Myers, everyone's favorite fall event, because you don't know if it's going to be sunny or it's going to rain. It ends up raining, and there's a lot of lightning delays. Actually ran into him. We're waiting out a rain delay. His brother-in-law was coaching a team out of Missouri. And so we ended up just catching up. Been a few years. I knew he was with the Twins, but he passed along the name and contact of our farm director. I said, "Hey, we're looking for guys that think like you, think differently, look at training and developing in a different light. There might be pro baseball might be an option." I was just thrilled to be, a Division I pitching coach. I thought that was really cool, and didn't really think, I didn't play pro ball or affiliated ball. I just was like, yeah. So threw my name in the ring. Pretty extensive interview process. I think it was five phone calls. I actually got approached by another organization towards the end of that, but I was pretty far along with the Twins. And I took a pitching role. What they ended up offering was the rehab pitching coach position. I would be based in Fort Myers at the spring training complex. I'd be in charge of all the on-field activities for all the arms going through rehab, whether it's something like a strain or the long term where it's surgery based. And getting those guys back on the field and executing their throwing programs and getting them back out there in the competition. So that was what I initially thought it was, which it was to a certain extent, but I also had position players too. So days were pretty packed. It kind of brought me back to my first stop at King, where hitting fungos at 9 a.m. to pitch or catch at 9:30. Maybe some BP with some of those other guys, or running a hitter to across town to JetBlue for a rehab game. Kind of just bounced around, and it gave me time personally to learn the ins and outs of affiliated baseball. There's a lot of technology that was, as I mentioned, in 15, 16 starting to come into play. But I got to ask a ton of questions, a lot of smart people here, and kind of get in at the beginning. It's like, hey, we're going to figure this out together. And I think that's kind of what this group, just finished my 5th year now, but that's kind of what we were doing. Like, we got some toys, we have some cool things, and we're going to try some stuff. Because we believe we have smart people, and, we're not getting, we're not spending the most money every year. We have to hit on the draft. We have to develop some of these guys and make them into something, and develop impact big leaguers in some shape or form. So after my first year, I think it was just it was my way of getting in. Ultimately, I knew I wanted to get back in the dugout and all that, and they were very aware of it. In 2020, slated to be in low A. Season didn't happen, obviously, and we were coaching and doing stuff remotely. Fast forward to 21, went back to low A. Really good experience because we were still in Fort Myers. So we had the full run of the spring training stadium, all the toys that we had there. Good season, winning record, got a lot of guys better, got a lot of guys promoted, specifically on the pitching side. But it was a lot of fun too. Coming off the missed year, a lot of energy, a lot of uncertainty. We were playing in different formats with the 6-game series. Every Monday was off. It was just different, which sure, why not after a really weird missed year? Let's do something different. And then after that season in 21, 22, I was in AA, which was in Wichita. It was our second year. Yep, I had Keith swearing. Second year at that stadium, beautiful ballpark, really cool league, Texas league. So I got to be in a different part of the country. another good season, made it to the playoffs, lost in the championship series. And then after the season, found out I was going to AAA for this season, 23. And for me, it's, I try and do better the year before and keep moving up, keep advancing. That's the goal. Goal is to get to the big leagues. But end up, through these 5 years, kind of been going up with the same group of guys. And I think that's been a really cool, byproduct of all this. And it kind of makes it feel like college a little bit, where you recruit them and you're part of their lives and you know a lot about them. And you've seen we've tried a bunch of things on the field and some stuff didn't work, and being open and like, hey, this might not be it, but like, we're going to give it a try and see what sticks kind of thing. And so we just finished up a few weeks ago, the 23 season. I think pretty successful. Some different, wins and losses are cool, but getting guys their first big league debut. We're 15 minutes from the big league stadium, so seeing guys that are part of that, how fast that happens, the promotions, the call ups, send ups, send downs, everything it's just faster. So no matter how much people try to give me a heads up before, it's like, being a pitching coach in AAA it's kind of a whirlwind. And I got a crash course in that in April, third week of the year. And I think we lost 3 starters, 2 promotions in a 4-day stretch. So you're piecing that together. It's not like college where you have 17, 18 arms. So we're rolling with 13, 14 and trying to piece that together with bullpen games at the last minute notice and getting creative with that. And it's just a part of it, but it was it's the closest thing to the big leagues. And for us being 15 minutes, I thought it was even more unique experience. So long-winded, a lot of stops, a lot of growing, a lot of some failure mixed in there too. But a lot of fun. And when I started out coaching in high school, I was like, all right, see what I can do in 5 years, and just kind of reevaluate every 5 years. And it's been fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing is we have a lot of coaches that listen to this too, like, or people who want to coach, or they think like it's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time in this business. And you gotta, I hate this term, but you do have to grind it out a little bit. And you're the walking embodiment of that. Like, you started in high school and you're one step away from coaching in the big leagues, which is awesome. I'm super proud of you and very happy to be a very good friend of yours. Go ahead, Andy. You were going to ask a question. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just going to give an emphatic hell yeah. Like, it's been cool to just be a part. I don't even want to call it parts. I don't want to take. There's no credit taken, but it's been cool to watch you climb the ladder and like knowing who you are and how you think and just what kind of dude you are. Like, you've earned every bit of it, but to be able to be like, yeah, my buddy's a AAA pitching coach and he's awesome. Like, it's just cool, man. Like, we've been here, watching you make this climb, and we know it hasn't always been easy, but for you to get where you are, like, it's because you're awesome at what you do and you're just a fantastic human being. So yeah, just want to add that before we'll get sappy for a second before we get into the fun stuff and start picking your brain. But
appreciate it, guys. No, it's the support, because you're gone for 7 months. So it's, friends, family, all that kind of gets you through, the low points, I guess, or where it feels like it's longer. But no, appreciate it, fellas.
First question I want to ask, because one of the things I think that there's a gap with high school kids sometimes is the preparation piece for a start, right? Like, you watch a lot of guys, they're going to start on Saturday for their high school game, and then they don't really have a plan for what the rest of it looks like. And I think that can be a really big adjustment for kids when they get to college, is that every day is done very purposefully. And I'd be curious if you could provide a high level of, for a starter in AAA, say start on start day, what's that week look like? And like, what are some of the things that you guys do and that you do as a pitching coach to help your guys prepare to be successful in that next start?
Yeah, I think one of the most common timelines is a 3-day cycle, and you're just repeating those 3 days and adjusting off an off day or a rain out would be your only audibles. So you'd have your day, day 0 or day 1, however you want to count it. It would be your start. So you pitch in the game. Next day be a day after, lighter catch. For us, it's our heavier lift. Depending on how the starter wants to tackle that, if he wants to just, hey, I know I'm going to lift twice this week, but am I going to go heavy upper body one day, lower half the other, or are they in some sort of cycle with the strength and conditioning department where they're doing 2 full bodies because they really need to flush out everything, that the workload that they've accrued up to that point, or it's the end of the year and it's like, I just need to do movement based stuff, and it might end up being a lot more mobility, stretching, massage, treatment, stuff like that, where we're just trying, not finish, but like we're at the back end of this thing and we've been doing it for a long time, and it's okay not to go as heavy. So you have a lighter day throwing. We give them the option of throwing go through their plyo routine, or play catch, or if they want to do both of those, they're going to cut back on volume on one or the other. And that's a lot of ownership on them. We're floating around in catch play and just making sure they're aware of like, hey, know where you're at, and how your body. I think Alan Yeager says it. Listen to your arm and all that. I think that still holds very true. No matter the level, if you're hanging, it's important to move your arm to a certain extent, but just stay within those guardrails and the limits that your body's telling you. Day 2 would be our day before, so we're getting ready for our pen. But we need to stretch it out. We need to get we didn't get all the soreness out from the day after. The day before, we're going to stretch it out a little bit, might go a little bit heavier in our plyo routine, might do some skill work, something we didn't like mechanically. We can blend that with mound plyos, or we could do some stuff without it, just drive work, with some resistance training, or just going through their motion and kind of talking through what they were feeling that last outing and let them fully recap. And that would be their day 2. Might be some running involved on that one to split up the lift and the run. And then they're getting ready for their pen on day 3. So you're back to you're in the 3-day cycle, another high intent. We encourage a lot of the same routine. So whether if you're a big mobility, movement prep, activation in the weight room prior to a start, let's keep that thing going with the bullpen. Keep that same consistent routine, so it's not foreign to your body. And a lot of the stuff it ends up being routine. So making sure we're hitting a lot of our check marks with our athletic training staff, our strength and conditioning. Are we hitting our certain, are they too fatigued? Do we need to back off on volume? There's a lot of communication that goes in between starts and right before that bullpen. And then bullpen day can be some guys 15 pitches and as many as 35, 40, depending on what we're trying to tackle. A lot of our stuff is geared towards development and improving. So we could be blending in a pitch design for the first half of a pen, and then an execution the back half in preparation for that next opponent. Or we could run through sequences that didn't go well in the previous start or outing. And then you repeat that cycle up until your start. So then you go a day after your pen, day before your start, and then you're starting again. The way our scheduling is on the 6-day or 6-game series with the Monday off, lower levels are pretty fluid with a 6-man rotation. We need to mirror the big leagues, which is on a 5. So we try and there'll be a lot of Tuesday, Sunday starts. So guys get familiar with that cycle as well. And then we'll deload throughout the year too, and give guys some extra days as well. But for high school, and I stressed this when I was a high school coach, because I want to make sure when they got to college, like, know what long toss is for you, know what your day after should look like. what do you like in the bullpen? What do you want to get out of this? And, have certain bullet points to attack. It's kind of cool because a lot of the same stuff I was trying to do as a high school coach and a college coach is we're keeping it simple with the guys here. We have way more information and way more resources, so we can dive as deep as we want to go. But it's the same concept. But high school kids listening, high school parents, or college kids, college parents too. It's the same thing. Identify that cycle that works for you, and I think the 3-day cycle is not anything earth shattering, but I think it's a good thing to follow, and you keep that cycle going. It should fit into, if you're pitching every Friday for your high school team or every Tuesday, you just follow it on that, wherever those days line up. But taking advantage of that, because you might not always have practice or team opportunities to work on that stuff. So making sure, especially in the travel ball season, you're able to get some side work in and stay on that schedule too.
Yeah, that prep piece I think it's important for performance, right? For high school kids to get on that routine. But I think it's one of the things that we talk a lot about with parents and with players is you want to play college baseball, you need to start thinking like a college baseball player. And like you need to start to wrap your head around what the bare minimum is or what your day or your week or your month is going to look like as a college athlete. And it just seems to me that pitching is one of those things in the travel ball industry and everything. And it doesn't help because you got kids that they start on Thursday and then they need to come back on Sunday so they can win the consolation round. And like some of that doesn't set them up for success. But I think high school, they fall into a fairly regular pattern. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of kids would benefit from just a little bit of structure. Like, this is what I do the day after. This is the day that I throw my pen. And stacking enough of those weeks together, you start to see a kid to develop more. And he's not just a thrower. Like he's worked on some stuff. He's, to your point, like he can go into that bullpen and say, hey, I really struggled with being able to get my fastball glove side last start. Like I want to focus on that today. I think for kids listening, it's important to understand that routine matters, but I think it's also important to understand that the guys in AAA aren't doing things wildly different than what you can do in high school, and you can start to build in some of those basic principles.
Absolutely. And, the travel stuff is what it is, unfortunately, but some of the teams that do it right, hey, instead of throwing a bullpen Thursday, you're closing it out for us, and then we're going to try and get 3 or 4 innings out of you on Sunday. And that still fits into the cycle. It's just, the teams that do it really well and the coaches that are awesome about it. We've all seen them. We've seen them go the other way too, but the ones that do it well, it's like, hey, you're not going more than 30 in this one inning or 25, whatever it is. And I know some tournaments have rules on that too. And then, hey, it's 3 and 55 or 60 max. And like, how many outs can you get within that and still showcase? I think it can filter in the same cycle. It's just, being mindful of the workload and how many pitches are going into it.
I think the other thing too, and you touched on it when you talked about the bull, like when you throw your bullpen in between starts, I think it happens in college and clearly it happens at the pro ball level too, is you start to try to iron out things that you may not have liked on your previous start. And sometimes it might be you're feeling it and your lights out and you're just going to try to continue to feel that groove. But I think especially younger players, sometimes you might not be as you're critical of yourself from the standpoint of like, well, I just got hit. And there's no, it's a surface level kind of like, I have to, we don't try to do anything different. We don't try to change up our routine, and I think that sometimes when you talk about like ironing out some mechanical stuff, like, obviously at the pro ball level and the college level, there's a lot more technology and a lot more that you can do in order to kind of get in depth on that stuff. But I think when you're younger, sometimes like you need to have somebody with you or around you that can go a little bit deeper than just like, it was a bad outing. And sometimes that's going to be the case, but like your bullpen should be something that is more geared towards you, not only getting prepped to throw your start, but also like let's iron out some things that we didn't like that we need to get better. Like maybe my 0-2 changeup that I really like to throw was horrible last outing. Like I'm going to throw a bunch of 0-2 changeups in this bullpen to try to get that to where I want it to be. Or, you know, my 0-0 breaking ball, I couldn't flip a breaking ball to save my life. Like, all right, let's focus on a couple more 0-0 breaking balls set up down the middle and just flip them in there and see what we can do there. You know, I feel like that gets lost, you know, because I remember when I was coaching, like you do it with some freshmen in the fall and it's like, well, like, why? Like, well, because I just watched you throw on Saturday and like you couldn't throw an 0-0 breaking ball to save your life. So like, if we're not going to actually practice this, like you're not just going to flip it on in the game. We need to actually do something to create that habit of being able to do that stuff. And I think, you know, what you're driving at is exactly what younger kids, you know, if they're doing it at this level, like you should at least start trying to understand those things at the lower level so that you can make yourself better as well.
Yeah. You know, just bare minimum, if you got 3 pitches, 2 of each, and then get into hitters. Start doing some counts, challenge yourself, and you can make it really basic too. Or hey, that like we got XYZ school coming up. They got, you know, 3, 4, and 5 are all lefties, and they could all, you know, they got some juice too. Like, let's just work on, you know, left-handed hitters, or, you know, you can make it really simple and basic, but still, you know, you're gearing and working towards something that's going to help benefit you down the road, even if you feel like you're in a groove and you can, you know, maybe you don't have those resources, but you can still game and practice for getting better or what's about to, you know, what you're about to face coming up.
Right.
It can be fun sometimes when you do it like that, right? Like if you're throwing with a purpose, right? Like hey, you know, this there 3-hole guy, there's a guy in scoring position. You know, I gotta, you know, this is the sequence I would go through in that spot and trying to execute it. And I think the other thing too is that I think when you give kids, I think sometimes when you give kids fine focus, you can get better results because they're not just, hey, let's go get our 25 off the mound today. Well, all right. Well, what is that? Even just breaking it down, like what's that 25 look like? The intent of it changes. And now you're developing without really thinking about it, just because you've put a little bit of a finer focus on it.
Absolutely.
I think that gets lost sometimes.
What is the I thought Andrew was going to ask a question. Sorry for that awkward pause there. What do you see, because you've coached at the college level and the professional level? Like, you know, obviously the pro ball level is, you know, you hear a lot of guys talk about like it's your career, right? Like you're kind of in charge of that process, like, and you guys, like you're still coaching, but like the play, like you're going to be treated like an adult. You know, what do you see or what have you seen at the pro ball level with guys that find success and like in their, like what in their makeup gets those guys success at the college level? Like I imagine, or excuse me, at the pro ball level, like I imagine they're not the guys that like needed their hand held during college to like go to practice, go to lift, do extra stuff. Like they're guys that are kind of intrinsically self-motivated, but I could be dead wrong because I didn't play or coach pro ball. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, there's going to be guys that are just extremely gifted and they can kind of roll out of bed and go do it. But the ones that it comes back to the routine and being consistent within that, and they're just consistent overall. It could go really bad or it could go really good, and you don't know the difference. They stay the same personality, demeanor on the mound. There's something on MLB Network a few years ago. It's talking about a starter in a season, 30 starts, let's say 10 are really good, like lights out, you got everything. 10 or you got a couple, and 10 are really bad, and you got to figure it out. And that's kind of sums up your season. And you're like, all right, how many of the 10 really bad ones can we kind of work through? But the good guys, the guys that are the most consistent and keep pushing, I think are the ones that end up at the end of the year having, they're rewarded, I guess, probably be the best way of putting it. It's they don't let the highs get too high, the lows get too low, to be kind of corny with it. They're working, they're pushing, they have really good stuff. They know it. They just have to exit. They just know yourself at a really high clip and what you're really good at. and do that over and over again. Don't try and reinvent the wheel in the third inning because they're hitting you. We're just going to throw a different pitch, or we need to change the attack plan, or they're jumping you 0-0 and we need to start mixing, or our strategy going into the game from our pre-start meeting is off. We need an audible in the second inning. Like, things happen, but you're defaulting to your strengths, and you're using that 10 out of 10 times. It's just know yourself at a really high clip, and I think that's what we try and do at an elite level, is help these guys know what they're really good at and how to attack guys in sequencing and, looking for things with the opponent. But it starts with them, and the guys that can do that at a really high clip and consistently, they end up having the most success. And they might not realize it in the moment or during the year, but I think looking back on it, and we're finishing up with some end of the year reviews, and it's like, you were really consistent the whole year, like month by month, really good. You might not have had all the results you wanted, but you ended up with a really good season. And we have just a huge sample size of stats because of so many games and innings and pitches. It's like, if you just hang with the process and go off yourself, and we maximize those, like, you're going to be in a really good spot come the end of September, going into October.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me because I think that there's such a small sample size, obviously, at the high school and college level, but I forget who I heard say it recently, but like, it's like, to be really, really good, like, is to be boring, because it is that consistency that, like, it's just showing up and doing, what you need to do day in and day out. And I think the one thing that needs to be understood for kids who want to play in college, for kids who want to play pro ball, like, it's like the bare minimum isn't going to get you there. Like, they're boring because they show up and they lift 5-6 times a week. They hit 7 days a week. They feel like whatever their throwing program is, they know. Like, it's boring, but it works, to your point. Like, stick with the process and you're going to end up being okay. But I think that there's, it's finding that part out about yourself in that process, right? Especially if you're younger. Like, it's, we're obviously talking about some elite athletes here, but like, when you're younger, it's figuring out what works for you and then showing up and doing that day in and day out, which I think is the hard thing for the vast majority of people, is to be able to do that day in, day out, and trust that this is going to get me to where I eventually want to go. And for some people, like, you're never going to play pro ball, and that's okay, but you could have a phenomenal college career in doing so. It doesn't necessarily, the end all be all doesn't have to be that like your success is defined by whether or not you played professional baseball. Because the majority of people are not going to. But that consistency piece in what you do in order to play at the highest level that you possibly can and find the success is, I think, really in anything it is that you do, and specifically within baseball.
Absolutely. That's it. Just, they are boring and they're fun to watch, and each day could be, it is very monotonous, but like, maybe for high school, college guys, you're looking at a month sample size. We can go week to week for, starts if they're going, 6-7 innings, 100 pitches, or every 2 weeks, just because we get the volume and the sample size to build off that. High school, you might need a full month. You might need 4 starts to try and see, like, is this working, or what I need to change or improve on for the next set.
You guys got all kinds of cool technology, right? And obviously TrackMan and Rapsodo and all that good stuff is a big part of baseball right now, specifically the pitching side. Like, I think the pitching side is ahead of the hitting side from a metrics perspective, and some of the information that you guys are able to pull on and access. Everybody loves the spin rates and the release points and all that kind of stuff for evaluation. But I'm more curious because I think it's more applicable, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because you've been at the lower level of the minor leagues and you've been where things are a lot more developmental. versus AAA, where these dudes are, a phone call away from going to the big leagues. How do you leverage that data on a day-to-day to help guys develop or keep them sharp? Like lower level, probably more the development piece, and like what kind of things are you looking at to make adjustments? And then how are you leveraging that now with some guys that are less about development and more about performance?
Yeah, so low levels, spot on. They come into the organization, draft, trade, whatever. With a good skill set. They're really good at some things, and we just need to raise the floor on a few others. So we're tracking that. We can go in a training environment and see how that's trending. We throw it in game, see how it's trending in games. After a sample size of a couple outings, 100 so pitches, like we can start to see what kind of trends. Is it working? Great. Let's keep doing it. Is it not working? All right, bag that, and we're going to try something different, a different grip, a different way of doing it. AAA, they're more, I'd say, a little more polished. Would probably be the best way of putting it, but they're still developing. They could be working on fine tuning a third, fourth pitch, or hey, like I've been in the big leagues before, and this mix isn't working, and I don't want to be an up and down guy. I want to go back and I want to stay. The game is different than the last time I was up there. I need to be better at this, or I need to get to these certain zones and, revamp the arsenal. Like every story is different at the higher levels. And it's just piecing that together and seeing what their journey is and what the track is to get up there and be impactful. If we can fall back on that, it's like, we want you to be good and we don't want you to come back. Like, let's hold ourselves to that standard. And while we're working through this stuff, like, this is what we're identifying as an organization. This is kind of what you came in, identifying that you want to work on, and like kind of marriage the two, I guess. And, see what that avenue looks like. And then we're going to go outing by outing, week by week. And then we'll sum it up each month on how we're doing and trending in that direction. I think is a really cool piece, and probably something that gets lost a little bit, that you can develop at a really high clip at the upper levels. And the TV league, the big leagues there's probably some, it's not developing up there because you're expected to go out there and compete, but I can guarantee there's some outings where some guys might try something a little bit different than people might think. There's grip changes during the year. There's some slight mechanical changes. It happens at every level. They do get smaller and smaller the higher you go. So I think that's the biggest thing to note. But the lower levels, absolutely, we're trying to get everything we can out of your mechanics, make them efficient, arm path, pitch design. We're trying to iron all that out. So as you climb, there are difficulties to each level. And I think that's the beautiful thing about having, right now we have, I think it's 4 full season, and you have the rookie complex league. But each level you go up, like the hitters get better on the pitching side. On the flip side, the hitters, the pitching gets better. They're able to throw more strikes. They can locate off speed for strikes early, and they can throw you some different stuff with 2 strikes. You have to protect on that. But on the pitching front, it's, the hitters, they just have better approaches the higher you go. So stuff you might get away with in low A, you'll still get away with it sometimes in high A, which is going to keep you in it. But you start to see like, yeah, I might need that third pitch, and then you get up to double A, and it's like, yeah, this mix isn't helping. Really gonna have to change it up or rethink how we're using all this stuff. Then you get to triple A, and it's there's some lineups where most of those guys have played at the big leagues at some point. And you're trying to get them out, and it's no different than the big leagues on some nights. But yeah, I think it just sums it up. And the higher levels, there's still stuff going on. A lot of teaching, a lot of developing, but I think mastering yourself, I think is kind of the best way to sum up, the upper levels compared to the lower levels, and equate the lower levels to like college. You're trying to, you got to college for a reason. Maybe it's velocity, maybe it's a really good fastball, maybe it's a swing and miss breaking ball, and you need to add velo. Your coaches, the recruit, you think like weight room and conditioning is going to help jumpstart, some added velo, and don't lose the breaking ball, man. It's only going to get better because you're going to throw harder. So it can be equated to those levels as well.
It's interesting. One of the guys ahead of William and Mary. He made it up to AAA in the Blue Jays organization, and I was talking to him one offseason about he was kind of making that steady climb, like low A, then he was full season, then he was in Double A, then he was in AAA. I'm like, well, what's the difference in the levels? He's like, the stuff's not different. He's like, every level I go up, he goes, in some cases, the stuff might even go down a little bit. He goes, it's the polish. It's guys can cross count you. They can locate in multiple parts of the zone. And it's an interesting progression of how guys do get polished, that he would say it was easy to hit in high A because if a guy got behind 2-0, he was just going to try to throw it as hard as he could. He goes, I get up to AAA and guys throwing a 87-mile-an-hour slider in a 2-0 count. Like, it completely changes the whole equation just because of the level of polish that's there. So that's interesting how they develop. You ever have guys come back from the big leagues and be like, oh shit, I need to make some adjustments? Like, if I'm going to get because I've heard different things that sometimes guys go up there and it's like, all right, this is a whole different animal. And I wonder, do you have guys come back and be like, hey, Pete, I got to make an adjustment if I'm going to stay up there?
Yeah. Had it on, both sides of that, but yeah, to answer the question, it's, what got you there? What are we going to do to keep you up there? And sometimes it is a numbers thing. And it's more so just the execution standpoint. Are you getting ahead? Are you staying ahead? Are you able to get in favorable counts? To be the aggressor and to stay on that front? Or did you just fall behind? Like, it's not a stuff thing. You weren't in good counts. So, challenging themselves or whatever the feedback was from the big league staff, sending them back down. I think that communication's key. Obviously we've seen them at our level before they go up, and then, what did they see through their lens? And it could be a running game thing, or it could be, something else to touch on, coming back to fine tune. And the next time they go up, it's not that they're not an option anymore. It's like, hey, we need to try and hammer this. And, for however long you're here, until they need you again. And then when you go back up there, like, this needs to be better. So I think it's just keep the conversation going. And on a lot of the guys, the ones that started with us and finished, whether it's AAA or the big leagues, it's a season-long conversation. So you're just riding it out the whole time. And there's going to be some peaks, valleys, all that stuff. And just I think it comes back to one of the earlier questions, just be consistent and take care of what you need to. And that's getting ahead. It's not going to change anytime soon. Getting ahead 0-0 is going to put you in a way better situation than going 1-0 and having to fight back and thinking, at least have that hitter think that he's got a shot. So throw strike one, it can go, it's way more in your favor.
You alluded to this earlier, and it's something that I've said on here a thousand times, that when you level up, it doesn't get easier. It generally gets a little bit tougher. But what's the compete factor like in pro ball as you've gone through all of the levels? Like, are they just do they compete in everything, or is it just a vary guy to guy? Because at the end of the day, like you said, you got to get the big leagues, you got to figure it out, and you're going to have to compete. If you have 10 starts where you're not good, you're going to have to figure it out some way, shape, or form. But how competitive are these? How competitive are these people as just individuals?
Yeah, big time, and it varies. And some are the quiet, more reserved. They're not going to say anything until it doesn't go their way, and then they might blow up. And that's just not them, but it built up to that point where they are so competitive and they want it so bad for themselves that it just didn't go their way, and then they have that reaction. Or there's the guys that are always high, and it's just they don't change either. So yeah, they're all competitive, and I think the difference with pro game and college is in the lower levels specifically, like they're just trying to get to the next level and competing against, their other guys on the team and other pitchers. And then you get to the upper levels and it's, there's families, there's money, there's different things involved, which drive that competition, I think, up a notch or change it. It's not, I'm not trying to get up there. I've been up there, but now I want to be more stable, or it's a different kind of competition. And I think it stems more internally, just because there are other factors in there. And then when you break down, referencing that 30 start breakdown, it's like, what can you learn out of the 10 bad ones or the 10, decent ones that you got to fight through a little bit to try and find that next really good one. There's just different circumstances. I think as you climb the ladder and, you're a freshman in college, you just want innings, you want to play. Sophomore year, seniors are gone, and hey, there might be a spot up for grabs. You're going to compete with those other guys, and it's that day-to-day battle. I think there's the continuity of the more of a team aspect in college and high school that you'll see. Not that these guys hate each other at the pro level. You see a little bit more team aspect in the lower levels because that's kind of what they're coming straight from a college or whatnot. But you get to the upper levels and you see it kind of change a little bit. And they're all fighting for one of those 26-man spots or 40-man off-season spot where you're an option. So you just see the competition go in that route. But they're all very uber competitive. It's just, they just show it in different ways.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered that, because even like when you coach in college, like your kids are competitive, but it's a little bit of a different animal. Like you're trying to make the conference tournament, you're trying to get to the NCAA tournament. Like there's, eventually like it's a dream that you want to get drafted or sign and play professionally, but I don't think you necessarily think of it in those terms of, you're going to be competing against other, your own teammates eventually. And then, I suppose like anything else, same reason why I'm out of coaching, like things start to change and your priorities shift. So
yeah.
You get a little bit more competitive on wanting to be a little bit more stable. Yeah, it's interesting. I never would have thought about it that way.
Then the high school and college, like we all had to fight it. It's like there's some guys on the team that, it's cool if we win, but don't really care. They just want to know like what's coming up on the weekend, or, they're grateful for an opportunity. And just, how do you keep them motivated and keep the guys that are super motivated and competing? Like that was like a bigger struggle, was just trying to identify that and trying to piece everyone and keep moving forward. But you would see those, some of those competitions, whether it's fall races or lifting strength, strongman stuff or whatever, putting stats on fall ball or keeping up with who's throwing more first pitch strikes in the spring, stuff like that, to kind of rank guys and see where that competition and where that competitive edge would come, who's trying to overtake the next guy. And I always felt like it was hard to get the guys that weren't necessarily, not that they're not bought in because they're there and they're doing the stuff as a team, but they're just not as invested or as competitive as some of the other guys on the team.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than the dude who goes 0 for 4 and you win a big game and he's acting like a freaking weenie in the bus, all pissed off. Or the guy who goes 4 for 4 and you just took a tough loss and he's all smiles and giggling with his, girlfriend on the phone. Like that was that was the stuff that always wore me out in college. Like, we're just trying to win. And it's interesting how that kind of changes a little bit as you get farther into your career where, winning always matters, but there is other stuff that factors into the day-to-day. So, all right, this is a question after. I want to take you back to your recruiting days. And obviously, you've got a ton of pitching experience at all different levels of baseball, from Division III up to AAA. You've obviously been around those big league guys a ton, but put yourself back at Fordham or Siena, because I think this is always in an interesting lens for people to hear it through, because everybody runs towards the velocity as a part of the evaluation, right? And me and Keith obviously know that that's not the singular point of an evaluation for a pitching coach, but you're showing up to an event, you're watching a guy throw. What are a couple physical things that you dial in on? And then what are a couple non-physical things that you dial in on during that evaluation process?
Yeah. Kind of misrecruiting a little bit, just for that, some of these aspects, but I like showing up. We'll just start at the beginning and like see what their routine is prior to the start. What their whole process entails. How detail oriented are they? Is it quick? Are they showing up? Did they get there after I did and just race to get everything in, get and go kind of stuff? Or was it really methodical, planned out? Maybe not even tell the kid I'm coming, and just show up, just talk to the high school coach, and just happen to be there. Don't wear any logo stuff, and just kind of hang out far away, see what they really are like. When they get on the mound, seeing what their routine is on the pen. Mechanically, if I haven't seen them in person, it's just been video. Try and lock in on the delivery, and see how that transfers into the game and repeatability. And then evaluation, if it's, we're in Lake Point back then or Fort Myers, and you go there to see a couple teams or identify a couple guys, and then you're looking for a slot to fill, and you don't see some of that early stuff. Swing and miss in zone, I think, is still a huge separator. Velocity is very cool, but the schools I was at, sometimes you're just not going to get those guys. So I see in 86 to 88 at Siena. It's like, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to reach out, but I know I need to go find the 83 to 85, maybe a cool 86 every now and again. But hey, he got a lot of swing and miss on a changeup. He got swing and miss on a slider, and a lot of it was in zone. There's something that the hitters aren't seeing. That was something I learned a little bit more with Kev at Fordham. Because the way he watches and the way he evaluates, if you ever see him Diamond Nation or some of these bigger places, he'll stand kind of like he's hitting a little bit, like off to the side and right behind home plate. And like, what does it look like if I was hitting? Conversations with him and, other hitting guys. And what do you look for? Or what makes a pitcher nasty or intimidating and stuff like that? I think that was something we did a really nice job with at Fordham. Obviously years prior to me, and then the year and a half, a couple of years I was there with Rob and Kev, is this is what we're looking for. We know we're going to go for the big guys, but we know realistically we're not going to get them. But our niche is, those 83, 84 to 5'6" guys that can spin a breaking ball. And when they get on campus, we're going to, pound breaking balls. That kind of was our deal. And, but if I could see a guy that was getting a lot of swing and miss in zone, no matter what the pitch was, there was something there that they weren't hitting, and recognizing. I thought that might be a separator that would pique my interest and at least want to generate some reach and, a follow up or see him in person again. And, that's why the travel stuff I thought was always kind of interesting, because it's most high school teams' best hitters on a travel team, and then they all meet at these places and play. So the lineups there's some gaps in some of them, but at least in these tournaments, we're in a showcase setting. If guys got one inning or two ups, and these guys are coming from some decent programs or some decent bats, and they just keep missing. It's like, all right, there's something there that might not look attractive to a Power 5 school because he doesn't throw hard, but he's missing bats and throwing strikes and getting ahead of guys. And, there might be some potential there, or some room to grow too.
Yeah, it's interesting from a hitter's perspective. One of the things that we always talk about is like swing and miss on strikes is a red flag. Like if you see a hitter and you watch him and he goes and swings and misses a bunch, it's like, oh, geez, that's not good. But to your point, from the pitcher's side of it, if a dude's missing bats at 84, 85 against good hitters, and you can look at him and be like, there's 15 pounds to put on that frame. He's going to be 87 to 89 at some point. Like, that's the guy that you can get that can be really successful. And I know you guys have, specifically at Fordham, like, had a ton of success developing those guys, and had some pretty premium draft picks as well. So that's
they had Kevin, Rob, and Jimmy. They were pounding. I think it was an arm a year was getting drafted. Sometimes a couple, and a bunch of them are still playing right now. And it's the same process, and they just kind of carved out this niche, and they knew what worked for them. And it was a different way of looking at it. Just it's so easy to go to those things and or go online and look at a profile or a video. It's like, 86 to 88, or that's probably I'm dating myself now because it's been so many years recruiting, but 88 to 90 now, or 90 plus, as a high school kid. And, we weren't getting those guys. If we were, like, something's wrong. So, why aren't they going to the ACC or SEC or, whatever? But, I think it's just swing and miss in zone. And then maybe like years ago, we just didn't know what ride or carry was. Guys blowing doors at 84. He's crushing the top of the zone. He's not trying to go there. It's just like, that's the way his ball's taken off. And guys see it. It's like they're on time, but not, on time enough. And they're swinging and missing all day. And that would change my lens on evaluating hitters too, recruiting. What's this guy got, or what's he doing differently, that maybe he's just an outlier. He's got an elite characteristic that we were missing for so many years with our, watching through our eyes. And now we can quantify with some of the technology that we have and some of the resources that are available. And, some of those early games at Lake Point, when you could go up to the tower and, understand vertical break and horizontal, like what some interesting characteristics might be. I think that's kind of where it started to make a change too. And then guys that could maximize that just kind of stood out differently, even without velocity.
There's a dude in your I don't know if he's still in the Twins organization, but he was at College of Charleston when I was at William Mary. Bailey Ober.
He just pitched the other night against the Astros, game 1.
Yeah. So he is up. Yeah. Well, he's one of those guys that what's he, 6'7"?
6'9".
Yeah, he's huge, and he's in college, and he might say I'm lying, but he was 87 to 88. Like, he might show you a 90 here and there. At the time, he was a freshman, but he's just blowing freaking doors off our guys. And we had 6 draft guys in the lineup that year, and every one of them came back in and was like, the ball's not ending up where it's supposed to end up. And I think he was one of those guys. It was before all the TrackMan stuff, where you could just tell there's something different about how that ball's carrying. And I don't know what his metrics are now, but he was one of those guys that it just didn't make any sense. But when you've got future draft picks coming back in and being like, dude, I don't know what the ball, I don't know. It's not where it's supposed to be. Like, I'm swinging at the ball that I usually hit, and it's not there.
And that'd be the same guys if we were in the first base dugout and right-handed hitters just keep fouling balls up and over my head. It's like, all right, we just got to keep going up because they're not seeing it, and it's just a late reaction. And that's spin circles sometimes. Like, why is this happening? Like, I don't get it. And then fast forward a couple of years, and it's like, oh, no, that all makes sense now. So we're just able to quantify stuff now. So
I'm sure it has something to do with Bailey's release point and his height and the angle, and I'm sure it's a combination of things. But
he's got some unique,
always stuck out.
Yeah, unique characteristics, and it's not much. He's added a few ticks on velo, and it's still about the same. And the guys just said same thing, like that extra life, extra hop. The guys just come back and say, I see it, but I don't. And then by the time it's too late, and it's already by you.
Yeah, he's shoved it on us a couple times. I'm sure he's a wonderful human, but I don't have fond memories of that guy pitching.
Awesome, dude.
Generally didn't turn out well for the Tribe when Bailey took them out. What characteristic stuff when you're looking at a high school guy? What are some of the things that cued you like that were red flags for you? Like not stuff wise, but if you went and watched a guy, stuff that made you maybe walk away or like second guess whether that guy's a recruitable dude.
There was some appearance stuff. It just like not just like if you didn't look into it, like it was really hard to. I would hang around because I made the time and the effort to come, and just like if there was like low motor or just low interest, or you're just not that you can't shoot the shit with your friends, or probably have to edit that out, but like if you're just just you're not all the way in it. It was really hard to just be that final because I'm the bridge to the head coach. So I'm trying to sell the head coach on being the final decision maker. There could be everything on field or pitching wise checks out, but you just see like how you interact with your teammates or lack thereof, or your parents, your interactions on a visit are different than what I see on the field. Those would be some turnoffs, but the appearance stuff. I just wanted the guys that I know would fit into what we were trying to do, or the guys I would want to be around. Enjoyed being there, very meticulous on their routine, or just had a process. I feel like we could mold that process too and tweak it, but it was really exciting to see some guys that just had that already established. Text, phone calls, demeanor on how they communicated, emails. Emails got a little more just bigger at Fordham, just because recruiting, we're just casting a bigger net, so we're getting more interest. It's in some of the other schools, but just how you communicated, and then basically how you were with your parents on a visit or at a camp, kind of said a lot too. Just being respectful and courteous. I think someone mentioned on here about the Gatorade and might need a Gatorade. I don't know. Like that wasn't a really big turnoff if you needed a drink and you didn't have time to go get it, or you don't have a car. So I never really cared much about that. It's just like be close. I sometimes close enough. Awesome, thanks, mom. And just like keep going. And it's kind of cool. But it's this is the nonverbal. It's just look into it or not into it. Even if they knew I was coming, like you don't have to put on a performance, but at least like look like you want to be there on some kids, and that's why I don't know. There's like a Rossi thing too. You just show up, put your lawn chair down, sit down the line, and tell them you're coming, but they don't they're looking around. They can't find you because you're not wearing the green polo or whatever. And I'm down the line, or watch all pregame from my car, and I'm there early too. So I just like some of these stuff that it just says a little bit more about you. But communicating nowadays with Twitter or X and email and a lot of the stuff that I think it just goes a long way if you just put some thought into it. And we've all gotten those chain emails or letters. It's dear coach, and it's the wrong school. It's like, no, man, like I'm at Albany and you're emailing, Sinicki at Binghamton. It's like, come on, like just put the right school, or, double down on what you can have the same email. Just make those changes and get right to the point, but just be interested. I think that's, if you're just reaching out to reach out, I think there's, it's just on the wrong foot. And then, yeah.
Yeah. Pulled out chair down the line. Keith has thrown that one out there a couple times. Coach Rossi special.
It's the best. Like you see way more, and then like I could even see kids like looking around. It's like I'm all the way over here, and you had no. It's kind of the cool thing. Like, you just see how they really are without having to put on a show.
Yep.
You did it for 55 years. He's gonna know.
He sticks out though. Like, I don't buy all the stories on guys not knowing. Why is this old, like, random old guy just down the line?
He's gonna listen to this and be like, "Oh,
yeah, you're gonna get a call. You're gonna get a call after this gets released, and he's gonna bust your balls.
That's fine.
But all right, we'll wrap this up. Last question: what advice? Because this question we asked everyone, and this one still holds true. What advice would you give to somebody who is looking to go play college baseball right now?
Right now, it's awesome. It's way different than when we were coming up and looking at schools. You can get a really good idea of what campuses look like, programs. There's a lot of good videos, and there's just so many more resources now to get a good idea of what you're interested in or what you might be interested or want to go. If you don't like the cold, you don't look in Northeast schools. If you want to go to the beach and look at Florida and be realistic on, where you want to go. And if it's maybe start out at JUCO and then go somewhere else. But I think being realistic and finding schools that fit you academically, as we've all said before, but it comes down, like, you're going to get a piece of paper at the end of this, and you're going to go off in the real world, and pro baseball is cool and it's awesome. And, but it's not going to be for everybody. And I think identifying what you value and what you want to do. And it's fine if you don't know. I think that's the cool thing about exploring for 4, sometimes 5 years in college is you start out in something, you don't really like it, and it's fine. You can change. But finding that fit academically and financially, I think, is going to help your parents too. And being realistic on, athletically. If you're getting interest from a wide range, then you're going to have to narrow that down a little bit. And hey, maybe I could walk on at a Division I or a Division II, or I could play all the time at a Division III. And I really enjoyed my Division III experience, and coached, head coach at a D3, and so did Andy. So it's like you kind of what you're. It's still baseball. It's still very competitive, and I like seeing places. Growing up in that area, Peninsula, Virginia, really good Division III schools, really good Division I. So going out and seeing those schools play and seeing how you stack up. I always would try and go to see BP or some pregame. That's another opportunity to maybe say hi to a coach, check in. I know, local guys would know, at least at senior, or maybe some cross coverage of the local high schools, but see what BP's like, see what how the guys interact and move around, and does that fit what you want to do? Is the coach yelling and all that's is that a turnoff for you? Is how they do things not with what you want to do or what you envision? Going to college camps. I'm not affiliated to a college anymore, so I don't have to plug a college camp, but it's when you're narrowing it down. I know it's not financially possible to go to every campus and school that you want to, but hey, Coach Larson, I'm really interested in Fordham and I'm coming to camp. I'd like to, looking forward to showing you what I can do. And if I could talk to you at the end of it, that'd be great, kind of thing. You get a visit out of it and see, tour the campus and get on the field, interact with us as coaches and maybe some other players that are working it, and pick their brains too. And I just think there's so much value in that, because can you see yourself on this campus in a year or two? If the answer is no, then it's not money wasted. It's well spent. You just look for the next thing. And I think that's what you guys do a great job of trying to narrow down help these student athletes identify what that fit would be. Not only from your coaching background and playing background, but just the connections you guys have. I think it's just huge. It just helps be a little more realistic and narrow it down a little bit to make that process I'll call it stress-free, or, there's some anxiety and some big question marks to it. But I think that's what you guys provide and really benefit these kids with. And I know you guys push them to go to campuses and get them in front of these coaches. And I think it's a really good opportunity. But anytime I, plug or do anything, it's see what a whole pregame, or you don't need an official visit to go to these things. Most campuses, except for Fordham, where you have to pay to park, you can get on campus and park for free and, show up. And, for the most part, they're doing stuff an hour and a half, 2 hours before, and you get a look for free, hang out for a couple innings, and you're still home for dinner or whatever else you got going on. So if you have the resources, and there's schools around everywhere, check out different levels and see what, other opportunities there might be other than, the big schools that everyone sees year in, year out, which are great. And they do a really nice job. But there's a lot of other schools that do great work too, and can provide a really good experience, both on the field and off.
Well said. Well said, my friend. Coach Glass, you got anything else to add?
No, I have nothing else to add. You nailed that last question. And the questions in between too.
Well, Coach Larson, I want to personally thank you for taking time. It's been wonderful seeing your smiling face. I know it was a long season for you, and we've been looking forward to having you on here for a while. So really appreciate your time. I'm jealous that you get to hang out with Keith on the weekends, on occasion at least. But you're the best, man. Super cool watching you, take on this journey up at AAA. I'm excited for whatever the next step is for you. You're the freaking man. We love you to death. And can't thank you enough for coming on.
I think it just means you need to come up to the Rock, Andy. I'd just throw that out there.
It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. I'm going to bring the pup up, bring the wife up. We'll get the crew together.
Get it
Go have
together
a good
before
time.
it snows.
I got to get a garbage plate.
There you go. Let's do it.
Yeah.
No, thank
All
you
right.
guys.
Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys.
For those of you who are watching on YouTube, hit the follow button, subscribe, smash it.
Smash, throttle, all the
Throttle.
things.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, EMD Baseball. If you want to learn more about what we do to help families, go to emdbaseball.com. Thanks again, Petey. We love you. Till next week. Thanks, everybody.